What's up, everybody? That time of the day, that time of the week, that time of the month.
Sure is.
You're listening to the good,
the band,
the ugly. I'm Big Papa.
And I'm Jeff.
Just
Jeff.
Just vanilla Jeff.
Yep.
I'm going to keep the vanilla.
Are you?
Yeah.
All right.
Could say cinnamon. I don't know where they came from. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. How are you?
Wow, nice out today.
Oh, beautiful.
Almost got the bike out.
Did you get the bike out?
Close.
Okay.
Very close.
Okay.
Turn your shit off over there. Jesus. Nothing worse than... Hang on, I better do this.
I say, do the same thing.
Yeah, I'm turning mine off.
There we
Nothing
go.
worse than a guy's phone going off.
I know. It's all ESPN, so it's all good.
Oh, anyways. Yeah, great weather out. The bike almost came out. Had a great weekend. You have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was slow. It's just slow. I mean, there's nothing going on.
Yeah, I had a lot of stuff to do with the club this weekend.
Yeah.
So. Shout out to the boys from Hades Hounds. Dude, there is not too many people that we can talk about that we're going to have on the show.
Yep.
That can start his resume off with had a gun pulled on him 3 times, been shot once, stabbed twice, overdosed, cardiac arrest, 4 bus fires, 2 plane crashes.
Yeah, bus crash.
I mean, dude.
And he walked away from it all.
I'm almost want to ride around with you for safety, and then I just like.
I went, nah.
But how did everybody else fare?
Yeah, right.
So
yeah.
So without further ado, we're going to bring on to the into the studio Quake Mark. So and he goes by Quake.
Yes.
So come on in, Quake.
I can get the camera to start back. Oh, there we go.
Hey, there he is. How we doing, man?
Perfect.
Let me say, I keep waking up on this side of the dirt.
That's right.
That's all that matters.
Right. As long as you don't have it.
And the official line is, I've been shot once, stabbed twice. I've survived 2 cardiac arrests, walked away from 2 plane crashes, 3 bus crashes, 4 bus fires, fell out of a truss at 18 feet, OD'd once, had guns pulled on me 4 other times. And now ask me why I believe in God and why I can't sleep.
Yeah. Wait for the other shoe to drop.
I think he nailed it.
A lot of people say the same thing. They say, oh, I don't want to fly with you. Why? Well, you've been in plane crashes. I'm like, I'm still here.
Right.
Follow me. I'll show you how to do this. What do you think the odds are of the 3rd time happening? And they all go, oh, yeah. You're probably pretty good to fly with. I'm like, yeah.
So now I see one of the plane crashes, one of the planes skidded off the runway with the Goo Goo Dolls back in 1999.
That's the official military statement.
Okay.
All right.
That's
all right.
not what it. When you land, this is the right wing, and that's where I was sitting. When you land like that,
yeah,
that's not skidded off the runway. The plane wound up in there. Yes, it's true.
Right.
Well, so when you saw the news a couple weeks ago, and you saw that plane that came down and flipped, you're going, been there, done that. Stop being a bunch of pussies.
And now, in the late 80s, I was taking a flight from LA to back home to Buffalo. I was living in Buffalo at the time and had to go through JFK, and the pilot missed the runway. And we wound up in the water like this. And that was my first quote unquote plane crash. When you got the pilot opening the door going, go that way.
You go that way.
Wow. As the plane fills up with water. But yeah, the second one was we were doing shows for the U.S. military at Christmas time in 1999. Woke up that morning in Frankfurt, Germany, at Ramstein Air Force Base, and it had snowed 6 inches there and over 2 feet in Bosnia, where we were supposed to go. The pilot and the ground crews all started talking, and we made the decision that these are the guys we were there to do the show for. Let's go and do it.
Sure.
Flew in, landed. They bucket brigaded all the gear that we had with us into the venue. They already had a PA and backline set up for us. We did a quick sound check, played a 75-minute set, tore down, back into the plane under 4 hours. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. And then we're flying back, and we're heading to Sicily, and on the approach to Sigonella, pilot made 5 passes, and after the 5th one, he came in and said, lock and load, we're going down one way or another. Loadmaster stood up, said, grab the seat in front of you. Our monitor guy got up. We had the first 14 rows of a DC-9 pulled out, and that's where our gear was. and our monitor guy was sitting there with his feet on. He went to the back. As I said, I'm on the right wing, and I can see the lights, and all of a sudden the plane caught wind shear and we spun sideways, and that's how we landed. And I still haven't figured out how he did it, but we went probably quarter of a mile down the runway, and somehow the plane came back up, righted, slammed down, which popped all the landing gear and shoved us into the ditch. And get out, go, go, go. And we're all sitting in the ditch in the sideways rain, and pilot comes out and goes, "Don't worry, I ran out of fuel. The plane's not going to blow up."
You're good.
You're fine.
Wow.
But yeah, the military's official statement was just that the plane ran off the runway. And they actually at one point told us we had to stop saying that we were in a plane crash. We're like, no, we've got evidence. We've got photos.
Yeah.
Well, we need your photos. No, you can't have them. They're like, what? And I said, well, my travel orders gave me what they call G3 status. G1 is the president, G2 is the Secretary of State, G3,
right?
Be a military commander.
Right.
And I'm a diplomat. You can't touch me. So we wound up. They wound up offering us money. We turned that down. We said we want to know what happened, why more people weren't out there, and it cost a lot of people their jobs when they found out why the Americans weren't the first ones out on the tarmac on an American Air Force or Navy base. So,
jeez,
not something I would suggest, by the way, trying.
Okay,
no.
But I heard a statement today talking because that small plane that just went down in Pennsylvania near the nursing home and stuff, and they said, well, plane crashes are pretty rare. And I'm like, hold on, that's like the third or fourth one this year.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well,
just old dice. The things happen in groups. So
we're glad you're here to talk to us today. Now, besides all the plane crashes and the guns and the knives and the all that, your resume's pretty thick here. I mean, you got the Cars, Phil Lesh and Friends, Dave Matthews, Tracy Chapman, Jane's Addiction,
Dangerous Toys,
Goo Goo Dolls, Guns N' Roses with Slash and everything. So you've been all over. Where did this start? I mean, you're from the Rochester, Buffalo area.
Yeah, I'm from Batavia, halfway between Buffalo and Rochester. Mm-hmm. I was in high school, and I'm I had 10 years of formal voice training. New York State All-State, 2 years, 1 year All-Eastern, and my senior year I was a runner-up McDonald All-American. And at the time, I started when I was 10 years old. I started doing acting with different groups around the area. We had a local group in Batavia, and then when Studio Arena in Buffalo or the War Memorial here in Rochester needed a kid extra for a Broadway show, I would get the call.
Nice.
But cool. I'm 15 years old, and a friend of mine who would later on go on to be the mayor of our school said, "Hey, I'm helping out a common friend of ours. He's a keyboard player at doing sound for him, and I know you want to get into a band. Why don't you go and help him out and kind of get into it a little bit?" And I'd done sound at one other event with another band. That other event, my first PA that I mixed on was 3 Shure Vocal Masters strapped together, and my PA was 2 Fender Twins aside, so I had treble, mid, and for tone control.
Right.
Do I have white hair again? But yeah, so I started helping that friend's band out. Said, wow, this is kind of a lot of fun. And I had to take 3 months off while I was working with them to do production of Little Abner. And I played the part of Earthquake Magoon, the old retired wrestler at Chase Daisy May. And at 16 years old, I was 5'10", 250 pounds. I was a big kid from a farm who used to pitch hay for, all the time. Mm-hmm. And all the guys in the band came and saw the show and said, wow, you're pretty good at this stuff. What are you doing working for us? I said, well, you pay better. And they're like, oh, okay. I went to go jump onto the drum riser, my first show back, and I tripped, fell, knocked the kid over, broke every cymbal the guy had. He stood up, threw his sticks at me, called me a goddamn earthquake.
That's where Quake came from.
Nice.
There you go.
I love it.
We got to the bottom. Well, I'm sure everybody's
awesome.
ever interviewed you has asked you the same, where's Quake come from? So,
well, then that band broke up, and they reformed another band. And I walk into rehearsal one day, And the keyboard player goes, "Hey, Quake," and the drummer sits up and goes, "Hey, that's it." And they're like, "What?" "We'll call the band Quake." You got to be kidding me. So my senior year, I was working for a band named after me. I did sound. I would sing backing vocals from front of house, and occasionally would walk up behind the keyboard player and play certain organ parts for him. And that senior year, my friend that had talked me into doing it, he said, "Look, we got all." He's now the mayor of the school, the president of the school, and he's like, "We got like 8 bands that want to play here. There's no way we could do that many dances and stuff. What do you think?" I said, "Why don't we do one big show? We'll do 2 stages. I'll bring in my PA. My band will headline my stage. You get Voyager, which had Ricky Ellis from the band Duke Jupiter.
Yeah.
And their front I with a kid named Jeff Falcone. His brother, John Falcone, is the president of Sennheiser USA. We'll do the sound. We'll ping pong between the 2 stages. We expected to draw about 200 or 300 kids. 2,800 kids later.
Holy.
Wow.
Yeah. We made so much money. We paid every band double what they were worth. And my graduating class was able to buy our school system its very first computer.
Holy cow.
Ironically, that young man that talked me into this, his name is Chuck Bism Rapp. Chuck Rapp. His older brother was the drummer in Blotto. And Chuck went on to Cornell into this brand new field on a full ride called computer science.
Right.
We bought our school the first computer. He went into computer science. His first job out of college was to work for the United States government and computerize the card catalog system in all libraries. And then he started a company that later on got sold off called Wang.
Oh, no shit.
Oh, wow.
Communications. And complete underachiever.
Yeah. Name dropper.
I know.
Right? It's funny because when I was 19, he when you were that age, you were McDonald All-American. I was a Ronald McDonald All-American back then.
Were you?
Yeah. I could polish off fries like nobody.
Get your diploma from Grimace?
Grimace, yes.
Nice. Good
yes.
for you.
Yeah.
Back then? No.
Yeah. Yeah. They had over 12 sold on the sign, and I helped them get to 1 million. Yeah. Yeah, I went to college for that.
That's why you have the physique you do today.
Yeah, I went to FU. Yeah. From your alma.
Yeah.
Anyways, so you're doing this stuff. How did that lead you to our previous guest band, Mr. Billy Sheehan's band of Talus back then?
Well, later on that year, the night before my senior concert, I got really sick. I took my shirt off, you go, "Oh my God, there's a missing link." I'm very hairy. And I got a carbuncle, which is basically a boil on steroids on my stomach. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, I had to call my parents. I was living on my own. My dad came, picked me up, took me to the hospital, and they did emergency surgery on my belly, removed the carbuncle, and stuck a rather large amount of gauze into my stomach to get the poison out of there and stuff. When I finally come to, it's 10 o'clock at night, and my girlfriend and all the other people from the choir or choruses are in my room. "Oh my God, the concert. Whoa, what the hell?" And they're like, "You missed it." So I never even got my senior show. But the next day, a guy comes into the hospital and says, "Are you the guy that put on the rock showcase at the high school?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "You're going to be my stage manager." I'm like, "Excuse me?" He had a concert coming up at the Genesee Fairgrounds to benefit a nightclub in Batavia. And the headliner was this band, Head East.
Yeah.
And there was Chicken Shack, the Buffalo Road Show, Little Trolls, Light Years with Billy Sheehan, and Head East. And at that show, I was actually mixing Buffalo Road Show as well as stage managing the thing. They said, "Yeah, why don't you go and do it, kid?" And it's the first time I met Ray Tobias, who owns Northeastern Productions. And I mixed on serial number 8 of the Yamaha PM2000s. I was the first guy to actually use it. But during our set, this enormous person comes walking along the back of the stage. I'm like, we're on semi-trailers with plywood, and I'm like, "Oh my God, he's going to break the axle." And afterwards, I go back after getting the Little Trolls on stage, and guy introduces himself, and it's Freddie Caserta. Now, if you remember the David Lee Roth videos, there was David, band would be out playing, and then David and his manager were dressed in white, and David's in a fat suit, and they're like in a studio setup. And David was imitating Freddie Caserta. He was this enormous man. He was a booking agent mostly. And you work for these guys? I said, no, not really. You know, and he goes, well, give me a call. I'll get you a band. I said, well, you got to give me 2 weeks. He's like, why? And I said, well, I graduate high school in 2 weeks. And he's like, oh, okay. So I called him up, got me a gig with a band out of Niagara Falls called Black Widow. I went out and did 4 shows with them, had an agreement for how much I was going to make. And at the end of the 4 shows, the singer said, well, I gave all the money to the guy from the sound company because he did all the work. I'm like, what are you talking about? He showed me how to set it up the first day, and then he sat around drinking all day long. So I started at the floor and ended up with him across the room and the bass player trying to strangle me with a bass strap. And he calls me the next day and goes, yeah, lay low, kid. You're not going to. So several months go by. I start working, ready for this one, selling rainbow vacuum cleaners.
Oh, boy.
I don't know if you know what it is, but it's a bong for your carpet. It looks like R2-D2.
Yeah.
And I barely sold enough machines to make it through the training part. And I don't know about that Mark kid. He's not going to make it. I mean, he won't wear a suit. He, won't cut his hair and stuff. They get a call, comes in, and somebody wants to buy some machines, and please go to such and such Lake Avenue, Rochester, New York. I pull up, and it's Kodak's world headquarters.
Oh.
I went in. I was meeting with the president of the company and his secretary, and he says, so we know all about your machines. We use them as air cleaners to make the film. We'd like to order 750 units. Actually, make that 751. I want one. And then his secretary went, 52. I want one. So I went from barely making it to being the #1 salesman in the country ever at that point.
Right.
One sale, 752 machines. Now I'm teaching the class. I'm like, I don't like this. But I get a call about 2 weeks later. I got my check, and it's Freddie. He goes, I got a band for you. I don't know if you're going to like it. I said, hold on a minute. I quit. Freddie, I'll call you as soon as I get home. Get home, call him up, and it was Big Wheelie and the Hubcaps. Now, this is 1979, and it's right when Sean and I was huge, and Wheelie was enormous. We were doing everything from lounges to convention centers, all fitting in this little 16-foot box truck, sound, lights, and backline. And myself and one other guy doing everything. And get into the springtime, and we play a club in Buffalo called Three Coins. And Freddie comes out one night, and he's got Mike Faley with him. Now, Mike at the time was the sound guy for Talus, very famous. And another show goes by, and he comes with Billy and Paul Varga, the drummer. And at the last show, it was Dave Cosentino and Freddie. We, after that, went down to Florida to play for a month in a club down there, and we would get Mondays off. And this second Monday off, Wheelie calls a meeting and says, so I signed the deal today. I'm now part owner of the club. We're going to move here, become the house band. And I'm like, this is not, good. I'm 19 years old at this point, just out of high school. And, they're all in their late 30s and early 40s. And they're like, Quake, we know you're not really interested in this, so just go back and you can call Freddie, and he's got another band for you. He goes, yeah, I got something for you. So as soon as you get back, call me up. I'll set up a meeting. I call him up, walk in, and goes, meet Billy, Paul, and Dave. This is your new band, Talus.
Wow.
What? Now, several years later, I find out that the guy that I had replaced with Big Wheelie was a guy named Jim Peachy. And he came out and saw a couple of shows with me. The kid's pretty good. Well, Talus, Mike wanted to leave and get into management and booking. And they talked to Jim Peachy. They talked to Randy Schul. Randy went on to be with Spyro Gyro for a long time. And Peachy told him, look, if you don't take the kid, you're an idiot. There we go.
There you go.
And a couple of months go by. The guy that owned the sound company was also our monitor guy. Was like, I don't know about this guy. He's not blowing anything up. I'm like, I know what red means, and I can hear it clipping.
Right.
Freaked out because I didn't just walk in and add low end to the kick drum. I put attack on it.
Right.
what are you doing? I said, hear that? You know? And so just before they announced that we were going to go open for Van Halen, they had signed on with Harvey and Corky to be their management, Harvey Weinstein.
Mm-hmm.
And their day-to-day manager was a guy named Brad Gray. Turn on any sitcom from the 90s, Seinfeld, Married with Children, all Brad Gray Enterprise.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And we do, the lighting guy decides to quit, and we do a showcase down in New York. And next thing you know, they're like, we're going to go open for Van Halen. Well, the only reason they took me is because they needed somebody to drive the truck, myself and the backline guy. You know, we slept in the motorhome that they had and stuff. And we go out, we start opening for Van Halen. First show, the front of house guy comes out, and the systems guy from Showco's like, he never comes out. And they start playing. Now, Billy had doubled the size of his rig. He was already louder than God. And the entire PA that we're touring arenas with back then was 10,000 watts a side. There's more than that in the average monitor rig these days.
Right. Yeah.
So, now, that's power consumption. It's not output, but still. And Billy's up there with, you know, 3 BGW 750s and, you know, the sound guy's like, what the hell is that? I said, that's my bass player. He doubled his rig. He goes, tell him to turn down. I'm like, he's not going to listen to me. All he'll do is fire my ass.
Right.
He ain't going to fire me. He gets on the blower, see a guy crawl out, unplugs half of the rig. End of the show, we finish loading up. I come back towards the dressing room, and you motherfucker, why did you, whoa. Right then, Townsend Wessinger was the guy's name, and the tour manager and the production manager come around the corner. Production manager was Pat Whitley. And, hey, stop yelling at your boy. He did nothing. I did it. You don't disrespect my band by playing like that, and you let your kid do his job. Billy's like, yes, sir. Okay. And tour goes on, and we had Halloween comes around. And the band guys, well, first off, we're in Salt Lake City, and it's like the third or fourth show of the tour, and the band's chasing every girl that they could find. And mind you, they're unsigned, so nobody knows who they are. And Salt Lake City, the sound guys are like, hey, come on out, let's smoke a joint and drink a beer in the bus during the day. Okay. Well, this girl comes out of the back lounge, grabs my hand, and goes, you're next. I'm like, excuse me? And she's like, oh, I'm giving blowjobs. I want to get passes for my friends. I'm like, shouldn't you ask? And the whole crew is like, what? I said, engaged? And, you know, farm kid from Batavia, New York.
Right.
You know, so they immediately go back in. As soon as the band comes in, hey, I got to tell you about your boy, you know. But the front of house guy kept going to him. This kid's pretty good. Well, he finds out I'm 19 years old. He's like, get out of here. I had to show my driver's license. Next thing you know, here comes the guy from the trucking company, Chris Olson. And he says, pulls the band aside and says, how old's that guy? 19. He can't drive that Ryder truck. That's against the law. You got to be at least 24. Right. We didn't know that. Well, yep, sure enough, there it is on the contract. Okay, we'll have him drive the motor. He can't drive that. It's a rental vehicle. He can ride. So now I'm riding on the tour, not driving.
Right.
What I was hired for. But it comes to Halloween, and the guy that was our monitor guy / owned the sound company, first off, he had to bring his own monitor rig with him. We're touring with Showco. You had 16 channels. They easily gave me 16 channels in front of house. It never got touched. Right. You know, what's the deal? And, you know, and as I tell folks, he took more solos than the band did. But all he had to do is at the end of the set, put a lid on his console and make sure we had hands. Well, he didn't. And we only had 30 minutes to get all the gear off the stage and in the truck, me and one other guy. And usually we could do it in 20 with hands. This one night, Halloween, he didn't do it. Down the ramp comes one of Billy's rear loadeds right at the end of the pack. And I grabbed it and wind up throwing my right shoulder out. So Pat Whitley sees this, grabs me, pulls me over to a wall, slams me against it, puts my shoulder back, and I'm like, just, oh my God, I want to die. And he and the stage backline guy get me into catering. There's the monitor guy taking pictures of Van Halen in their costumes. with our band standing around him. And he comes over, hey guys, what's wrong? And I, here again, started at the floor. F you, I quit. Tour manager comes over, calm down, go in the dressing room, sit down, what's going on? Backline guy, Pat Willie, tell him what happened. And tour manager comes in and says, you're not going home. Bob Stewart is. Okay, fair enough. We come back from that tour. They wind up making me the road manager. In other words, I collected the money at the end of the night.
Right.
And I would fly back and forth with contracts for them, Brad Gray and stuff. And we're about a month into being home. And we play in my hometown. At the time, that club that we did the benefit for was, at this point, I think it was called McNasty's. And the place is packed. Now, I had been engaged to my high school sweetheart. And when I came home off the tour, she broke up with me. And she's there at the show, and she's about that, over here. I can kind of see her. And we're just about the end of the night. And the band comes on and goes, well, we just came off this tour with Van Halen. Crowd's going nuts. And he goes, we had an incident happen on our tour where one of the guys in our crew got offered some favors from some women, and he turned them down. He was engaged at the time and, was trying to be an honest person. And he goes, it's rare that type of person exists in this band, in this world. He goes, you know him as Tim. We know him as Quake. He's our front of house guy. Now the place is going nuts. I'm like, 3 bottles of champagne to the stage. And I look over and my ex-girlfriend's about that big. And they said, so we came home and we wrote this song for him to teach him what's so bad about using your body to get what you want. And it's on their second record. It's called Smart Lady in a Madman's World. And that was written to explain that. So, but that just led into, the snowball started rolling after that. I wound up leaving them because I got an offer to go to work for Showco to do the last 3 weeks of Pat Travers' Blackmore's Rainbow with the two bands flip-flopping the headline slot. And I mixed both bands. 20 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and then I took a year, went to college at GCC, studied math and science, looking at acoustics. Pulled the 4.0 and said, I still got this itch. I kind of like this whole touring thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Went back to Buffalo, got a gig with a band. That band rented gear from a sound company. That sound company hired me to be their guy. That was the company I ran that was competing with National Audio. And I had a kid that worked in our office that had been a student over at the University of Buffalo. And I talked the University of Buffalo into starting a tech program because they were having problems getting kids to show up for load out. They'd show up for load in, they get the t-shirt and then split.
Right.
Well, I said, train them, teach them upstage, downstage, stage left, stage right. Why? Here's an over-under coil. Here's a regular coil. Here's a figure eight. Why do you do it? Pay them minimum wage. They're covered by insurance, and they're going to show up because they're getting paid.
Right.
Well, out of that program, this one kid who became my office manager, he went on to be the vice president of Cat Power Entertainment Services, the largest generator company in the U.S.
Yep.
The former business agent for the IATSE in Hamilton, Ontario, was one of my students and also a shop or an office manager for us. 3 guitar techs, 2 lighting people, all came through the class that I taught. But this one kid, Gary Rosner was his name, says, you don't belong here. You need to leave. And at the time, it was myself and this guy, Mike Fechner. And he says, you guys are just, your skills are way past us. You need to leave. Well, Mike moved to Boston. I got a call to go do Keel. And I grew up with Mark Ferrari. I know him as Mark. And, went out to show up to audition for the band. That led to several years with them, which led me to, during that time when I went out to audition, told Mark, I said, I want to get a Buffalo paper. Can we stop someplace? So we pull up to this newsstand on the corner of Fairfax and Melrose. And he goes, hey, Slash, how are you? Oh, hey, Quake, this is my buddy Slash. He plays in a band called The Road Crew. This is my buddy Quake. We're auditioning him to be a sound guy. Oh, hey, man, how are you? And jump in the car and he goes, he's a pretty good guitar player, but I'm a better songwriter. I've seen that for Sweet Child of Mine. No, he's not. But yeah, so we a couple of years go down later. It's 1986. I finished a tour, and Jennifer Perry, who worked for the management company, says, I got this band. You got to meet them. You're the guy. They're getting ready to put a record out on Geffen. And she introduces me to their manager, Vicki Hamilton. And she goes, come on, we're going to Troubadour. And it's Guns N' Roses. And I saw the show, was like, holy shit, they're loud. And after that, we go to a party. I actually did some stuff with Izzy and Slash that way. And flew home and turned the tour down. I wound up talking to him 3 other times. This next time they called me, I was 2 weeks out of rehab, and I realized from 1986 to 1988 that they had burned through 6 front of house guys, and 4 of them were named guys. And you guys have seen my resume. For a guy touring for 45 years, it's not very big. But if you look, 10 years, 4 album cycles. Slash's case, 20, going on 25 years now that I've been. Jeez. I'm the guy you ask back, not the guy you fire.
Right.
And but that's introduced me to him. Keel finished, and management had another band for me, Dangerous Toys. They actually flew me down to Texas to meet the guys, and I just finished a tour with Armored Saint, and we'd had a Watchtower open for us. So I met Jake, and he had to finish that gig and run real quick to another gig down the street. And we finished playing. We ran down the street, and I caught their last song, and it was Tease and Please.
Yep.
Which was their first single.
Yep.
But yeah, and that was the first band I officially, I should say the second band I officially tour managed. I did a tour with Circus of Power in between that. Which is when I asked Dangerous Toys, how'd you find me? And they said, well, manager told us to go down to our club in Austin and check out bands. And they said, we like the way Jane's Addiction sounded, and we like the way Circus of Power sounded. And the manager said, Circus Power, big dude, red bandana. He goes, yeah, he's got a weird name like Shake or something. He goes, it's Quake. I know him. He's suing me right now. I was so they had to pay for my tax info from Keel. But but Circus of Power, I was out with them for 2 weeks, and their tour manager/manager was Ron Lafitte. And Ron says, hey, I got to go back to the office. Can you check the band in the hotel? We got a couple of days off. Sure. A week later, I called up and said, I take it I'm now the tour manager. Oh, yeah, and you got a raise. Oh, great. I didn't want to be the tour manager.
Perfect.
Yeah. But, even with Keel made me their production manager in 1986. And, you heard me talk about shooting up and stuff. I freely talk about the fact I'm a sober coke and heroin addict. I went to rehab in 1988, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I never looked back. I had a reason. I knew I wanted to marry my now wife. And, I met my wife at the Penny Arcade. We dated for 7 years, finally got engaged through an argument. Did I win or lose that, by the way?
She lost. Yeah. You won.
Yeah. So, I got out of rehab, and I was very fortunate that the artist I was working for at the time was Stacy Q, and she was going on the Just Say No tour, and she kind of figured having a front of house guy that's a junkie and a cokehead, not a great idea. But yeah, I haven't looked back. Knock on wood. There's not
Quake,
a day goes by. Think about it, but
How long were you with Dangerous Toys?
4 years, I want to say. Basically, the entire time they were signed to Columbia.
Okay, so you were with them during the Operation Rock and Roll tour?
Absolutely.
I saw that in Weedsport.
Oh, wow.
That's why I asked. Yeah.
Now, it's funny because I had, after their first tour, they bought me my first computer. Oh. And I was sitting around, and I got to find a gig. And Ron Lafitte, who's now a manager, calls me up and says, you got to go mix Megadeth. I'm like, he's got a bad reputation, dude. And he goes, just come in, meet him. He's gonna love you. All right. So I go to his office, and I'm sitting there for probably 4 hours. Wait. And finally Ron comes out and goes, they just call, or comes in to where I was, because they just called. He's drunk. They put him in a cab.
Yeah.
I said, dude, I can't be like that. I'm just out of rehab myself. I'm really, and he goes, no, I get it. And I go into the lobby, and there's Ted Gardner standing there with Perry Farrell. They were going to talk to Ron about being their manager. Now, I had met Ted at a gig with Keel. He was the production manager at the time for Yngwie Malmsteen. I was doing Keel, and we were playing a stadium show at Gillette Stadium, or Foxborough Stadium at the time,
right?
With Aerosmith. Mm-hmm. And we met in the morning because Ron was the guy that brought Yngwie to the U.S. And to say they hated each other is to say that they knew they could stand each other. No. I said, you keep your boy over there, I'll keep mine over here. There's one point where we kind of crossed, and the two of us are in between. Back down, boy, just calm down. While we're sitting there, we're in our bus doing some shots and stuff. We're done. We're like, they should have been on. Fuck, Yngwie should have been on 15 minutes ago. I open the door to the bus, and I see Ted holding Yngwie off the back of the stage by the neck. The wireless wasn't working, so he made him go on playing on a cable. He gets sacked afterwards, and we're just getting ready to pull out, and he comes up and knocks on the door. And it's Quake here. I said, yeah. And he goes, hey, Quakester, I just got fired. Can I hitch a ride with you guys to, down the road to the airport? Hold on. Hey, guys, the production manager for Yngwie is here. Hey, what? Shut up. Everybody calm down. He just got fired and wants to hitch a ride. Fuck, come on in. So I knew Ted, and Ted looks and goes, what are you doing here? I said, he's trying to get me to work for Megadeth, but I'm not really interested. Bloody hell, why didn't you go to work for us? I said, who is us? And he goes, this is Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction. Light bulb goes on, and I went, dangerous. Like how Circus of Power sounded in Jane. Yeah, I'll do it. Look, call me in a couple of days, and we'll work the money out. And we get on that tour. First off, we go to Europe to play some festivals, and then they broke the tour for 10 days so I could fly home and get married. I just got hired by these guys, by the way. So go back, and about halfway through that tour, Ted goes, I've never seen a CV on you. Can you give me your resume? And I'm like, sure. And he's like, bloody hell, you've done all this production management experience and all this sound company experience being a stage manager. You're going to be our production manager in the States. How much? He told me, all right, I'll do it for that. And go to the States. And that was the Ritual de la Habitual tour, where we started in clubs, and by the end of that leg, 6 weeks, we're in arenas. I finally had to tell him, stop moving the venues. I can't get enough gear out here to make this work. Right.
Yeah.
And end of the tour, I said, you need to replace me. And they're like, well, we got this idea for this tour coming up this summer. We're going to call it Lollapalooza. We're going to take a bunch of punk bands and put them on stage with good PAs in weird venues. I said, okay, we'll do it like they do a European festival. Put everybody on risers, round robin it. Do a couple of days of pre-production. Everybody gets a nice long sound check, chart the hell out of everything, and hire that guy from Golden Voice to be your stage manager, Kevin Lang. And during that period of time, we'd played 4 shows at the Palladium in LA, and Kevin and I were talking, because the early days of moshing and stage diving, we were learning how to deal with it. And I said, well, he's like, there's this idea over in the Netherlands. I said, yeah, Mojo. They got the promoter. They've got this big steel thing that has to be moved with a forklift that's 4 meters wide. I said, if you broke that down into 4-foot sections, made a plate that folds and flips into the audience just like their thing does, and put a leg on it, you can fold the whole thing up and put it in a set car. You go, say that again? Fourth show, there's a CAD drawing sitting on my desk of the first metal barricade. Kevin built it. 2 months later, we took it out with us on the road.
That's cool.
And he never patented it. And, he and I have talked several times since then about, damn, we should have done that. Because if we had, I'm sitting on a beach right now with a little umbrella and my drink. And,
that's right.
Hi, guy.
Well, it gave the meaning, true meaning to a heavy metal show.
Yeah. So
metal show. Yeah.
So I go into being just the sound guy again, and they bring in another guy. And I go back to Dangerous Toys. So I left the #1 tour of the year and wind up on Operation Rock and Roll, which was the #1 loser of the year. The tour was owned by Pace Concerts, Lou Messina out of Houston. And all the bands were on Sony, either Epic or Columbia. And Sony made Lou go through the tour, even though it was sold like a raw steak to a vegetarian. There was this band that had just come out. You might have heard of them, called Nirvana.
Yeah.
And it was Nirvana and Pearl Jam's world we were just living in.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Dangerous Toys on a $15 ticket back in 1991
Yep.
could have sold 2,000 tickets. There were shows we did with the bill was Judas Priest, Alice Cooper, Motorhead,
Yep.
Dangerous Toys, and Metal Church.
Yes.
Right.
And 5 bands, and we were lucky if we were selling 2,500 tickets at places. There were several venues that got rid of Motorhead and Metal Church and just kept the other 3, and we still could sell squad. Matter of fact, promoter there in Syracuse, Chuck Chow, lost his ass on that tour, and because he did one of the dates, and I give that man credit. He's an honest man. He paid everybody the money he owed him.
Yeah, Chuck's out.
That's
He was,
awesome.
he was a good guy.
But yeah, so while I'm out with Dangerous Toys, they took a little bit of a breather, and the manager's like, I got another band I want you to do. Okay, great. And he introduces me to him, and it's The Scream with John Corabi.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we go out, we do a 6-week run, and in 6 weeks, they bought me 8 pairs of glasses that I had to keep breaking up fights. The bass player and the drummer would get drunk and pull knives on each other and stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is so much fun. So we go out, and the management decides this brilliant idea. Let's put Dangerous Toys and The Scream out together. You'll tour manage both and do sound for both. And I'm like, oh my God, you're killing me. Well, he hires another guy to be my assistant.
Yeah.
They trained martial arts expert to kind of help me soothe that camp down a little bit.
Sounds like a wise choice.
You're right.
Yeah. But yeah, actually step back a little bit to go on Operation Rock and Roll. Sony comes to us and says, well, we got buses for you guys. I'm like, I already booked my bus. And I booked it through a company called Florida Coach. I had an agent that used that company. And they said, oh, yeah, we got them through this company, Florida Coach. I said, okay, well, send me the prices and stuff. And the cost for my bus that they had negotiated was more than double what I was going to pay. And so I'm like, oh, I'll use my guy. And we got a bus driver by the name of Ernest Wethington. Now, Ernest Wethington was Elvis's bus driver.
Oh, no shit.
Okay. All right.
Ernest, I want to leave at 11:15. Ernest would show up at 9 and sit, and we're on a festival tour. He'd sit behind the wheel wearing his gray sweatshirt, his size 28 Wrangler jeans, and every driver would come up, Ernest, how do we get there tonight? You pull out here to the traffic light and you turn left. You get on the freeway and you head east, and you go down, you count yourself 3 truck stops. He didn't know mile markers. He didn't know route numbers. Never got lost.
That's awesome.
Unbelievable. But so we do Dangerous Toys. We do The Scream. I've got this bus agent that got me buses for everybody and stuff. And fast forward to January, I get a call from the bus agent. He goes, I got this band. They're going to go on their first tour in a bus. And their front of house guy, tour manager, is doing Susanna Hoffs. So they need somebody to fill in for 6 weeks. It's probably going to be the end of their tour too. So, okay, I call up the management. They said, well, can you come down to Columbia Records? Sure. Go down there, and I'm sitting in the lobby of their product manager, guy named Tom Gibson, waiting for he and this guy, Chris Blake, to meet with me. And this kid comes up and he's staring at my feet. And he goes, there's Earthquake beer up in Seattle, and it's really good. You should try it sometime. I'm like, oh, okay. And he's hanging with these other 2 guys. And I said, that guy looks like my accountant. And I bet you they're the guys that go around putting flyers on cars. And when they're talking to me, and they said, well, this is for a band called Toad the Wet Sprocket. And I heard the name, and I went, oh, they want me because I did Jane's Addiction. Right. Another weird name, not knowing anything about the band.
Right.
But you sound like you'd be great, and let me bring the band in. And, band comes in. You guys are the band? Really? And the bus is here. We're going to audition. We're going to, interview the bus. Okay. I walked down. I looked at the driver and I was like, oh my God. glass-aligned curtains, the
Yeah.
whole shape up. I'm like, oh my God. And they're all broken. And I looked at the driver and said, does it run? He goes, yeah, it runs great. This is my bus. I'm like, oh shit. Okay, let's do this. So I start working for them. Within 2 weeks, they're like, we don't want the other guy back. And we had band, crew, all the backline and all the merch and all the stuff. We had Amnesty International traveling with us at all our shows. And we had all that stuff all crammed into a 40-foot American Eagle bus.
Oof.
And it had a hole in the back on the bottom driver's side bunk. And that hole, when in the wintertime, we couldn't get that bunk area very warm, but and it's winter. And we're playing with Chris Whitley, and they're in a brand new, Florida coach, 45 foot with only one axle, tons of base space. They, and they were doing the same thing. And I'm like, we need to get another bus. We need to get another bus. So manager comes out for a couple of days. We were up in Canada, and we made a drive from Canada to Vermont. And I get up in the morning to check everybody in the hotel. Manager's like, oh my God. I'm like, yeah, it's about 35 degrees in there, bro. And he goes, how fast can you get that other bus here? I said, take about 2 days. 2 days later, we had a new bus. But a week after that, the band comes to me and goes, we don't want our old guy back. I said, well, I have to have a conversation with your manager because your money's terrible. It was $700 a week, but it was January. So I'm like, who the hell works in January? Right. And a lot of my friends had turned this band down.
Right.
Now, during that trip, our first bus driver on Valentine's Day actually calls me up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He's having a heart problem. He wound up getting a pacemaker put in. So I drove the bus that day. And then another driver comes out. I had to let him go because of some political issues with the band. And the owner of the bus company sends his son out. Well, he catches pneumonia. So he's sleeping on the front couch. I'm driving the bus up in Canada, and they're like, yeah, we're going to finish this tour with Chris, and we're going to go make another record. I said, well, you're about to put that All I Want song out. Why don't you use the record company as a barometer, and let's see what happens. Now, a couple of weeks go by. We have to go to Washington, D.C. to play a Now rally. That's the biggest show I've ever done in my career.
Okay.
They said there was 500,000 people. I'd say at least 250,000. On the mall. Mm-hmm. Myself, my crew, the band, Ron Silverman, and a couple of people that work for the sound company. I'm pretty sure we were the only males there. Yeah, it was huge. And then All I Want comes out, and we had to fly from Florida up to Cincinnati to play the chili cook-off that they have there. And one of the radio stations in Cincinnati was sponsoring the stage. We get there, get set up, get ready to play and stuff, and go back into the trailers for the dressing rooms. And I come out, and there's the cops with the promoters. They're like, we got to do something. I'm like, what's wrong? And I look out, and there's people in the trees.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I went, okay, they're for real. We start with Chris Whitley. We're doing shows, and promoters are complaining, why we got to pay these guys the same money as Grit Wisley? He's got all this money behind him from Columbia Records. And, I've known you guys. Well, I'll pick on Bogarts as a good example in Cincinnati. I've known you guys for years, but I want to hire somebody to click the door. And they're like, you don't trust us? I said, no, not to click people in, to click them out after we play. I want to see. Well, I go into settlement with their tour manager, and we come out, and the guy comes up from the door and goes, here, 1,200 seat room, 1,100 people left.
Holy.
And I looked
that is crazy.
Why are you paying me that kind of money again? Now, at this point, Chris Whitley's people are like, we need to swap. And I'm like, no, my audience is not going to sit through that volume because Chris was loud.
Right.
I wound up a couple of years later, talented young man, could do more by himself than people could do with an orchestra behind him. But Toad was to start with him in little 200-seat rooms and to take them all the way through arenas was a hell of a ride.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Now, unfortunately, during that period of time, Dangerous Toys got dropped. The Scream, while I was out with the Scream, I drove Karabi to the audition, and I was one of the people who go, what the hell? How much are they going to pay you? How much you making here? Go do that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool. What's out of all the venues you've been through in the world, what was your favorite one that you've?
That's a tough one.
Weedsport Speedway.
An arena at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. That's a wonderful sounding place. But I mean, I've done everything from Download to Hellfest to all these festivals, and some of those have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
Playing the Milky Way in Amsterdam, is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Slash, unfortunately, has made me play the whiskey 7 times.
He loves the whiskey.
What a jerk.
Well, my first show in 2000, I get a call from this guy that was out tour managing Slash's Snake Pit, a guy named Larry Moran. And he said, hey, would you be interested in working with this band? I said, what color is the singer's hair? And he goes, he's a black guy. I'm like, sign me up. And he's like, what? And I said, the redheaded guy fires people, for no reason.
Right.
Literally, Guns N' Roses has a video from the 80s where they're at a live show. I believe it was New York City. And in the middle of the song, Axl fires a front of house guy. So I'm like, I don't want to do that. But I get out there as production manager and front of house guy. They had hired a friend of mine, Stuart Ross, to be the tour consultant because they let Larry go from the tour when they were out opening for AC/DC. They were doing a world tour, and he said, I don't have any production chops. So they fire Larry, they hire Stuart. Stuart says, well, I won't tour manage it, but I'll be your consultant and I'll get you somebody. And he goes, you don't even have a sound guy. And he's meeting with Slash, his manager, Jerry Heller, from NWA, and Slash's guitar tech, Adam Day. And he goes, you don't even have a sound guy, let alone a production guy. And he goes, I got a guy. And Slash goes, well, our old guy had this guy that said he'd do it. I don't know. I talked to him several times with Guns, and he wouldn't work with us. And, but we should probably give him the first right of refusal. And Stuart goes, well, give me his name and I'll find him. Now, Stuart Ross is the kind of guy, he's so connected that if you pushed a road case at the Slide in 1986 or 82, out of the way for some girl to walk out, he'll find you.
Right.
And he goes,
all right.
Guy, Stuart laughs, goes, speed dial 3. That's who I was calling. But yeah, I get out there and start working with his band. It was an interesting group. I'll be polite. Slash will tell you that was the lowest part of his career. He was a severe alcoholic. And the rest of the band was just crazy. The drummer was Matt Logg, who plays with AC/DC now. Give me a dozen of those guys, I'll take them around the world anytime. But as far as other venue, because I've had special shows in a lot of bigger places and a lot of smaller ones. A couple years back, we played the Apollo in Hammersmith in London, which was the first place I'd ever played in London. We shot a DVD there with Slash.
You said Hammersmith?
Yeah.
Oh, the Hammersmith Odeon. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a challenge to work in and stuff. But unfortunately, I'll pick on Slash as a great example. I've kind of proven in the fact that I can pull a semi up in front of the whiskey that I can make a lot of things work.
Right.
For God's sakes, we played the Belly Up in Aspen with his band, and this is when he had all the cabinets pointing at me and was like, hair blown back, loud, and stuff. Which I always tell folks when I started mixing the Conspirators in 2012. I was supposed to just fill in for 6 weeks for Toby Francis, and we started doing all the big metal rock festivals around, and all these people would, who's the old guy mixing Slash? And then they'd stand there and go, wow, he's not afraid of the PA.
Right.
Yeah. But I'd have to say those are probably the ones that stick out the most, though.
Yeah, that's cool.
That is cool.
Is there anybody that took your breath away that you've worked for? I mean, you kind of have been with guys long enough that they were nothing then they were something. You were there for the ride.
And it's funny you said that because I get a lot of people's, I've gotten offered to do the big stuff.
Yeah.
For me, the joy is in the ride.
Yeah.
And it's a good way of putting this. Paying it forward.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Okay.
Helping them understand. I'll pick on the Goo Goo Dolls. They were just starting to break with Iris when I started. And they had been trying to hire me for decades. And when it finally did happen, but I'm like, no, I wouldn't go spending that money here. Let's wait and do it on the next tour, or stuff like that. That's fun. And here, like you said, taking Toad out of bars into arenas was an amazing. And watching the transformation of Glenn Phillips, the singer, because he was the kid staring at my feet. And then a couple of years go by. First off, Toad was the luckiest band in the world to open for. Here are some of their opening acts: Jim Blossoms, Rusted Root, the Dave Matthews Band, Wallflowers, the Grays, which had members of Jellyfish, Sarah McLachlan. Who else? There's a couple others. Hootie and the Blowfish.
Right.
Wow.
I've got a contract on my wall. When they sent me Hootie in October and said, we want to see if this band will fit in with you. We had met them once before. They did the show with us. Yeah, they'll be fine. They'll be great. Well, from October to January, when they started the tour, they sold 5 million albums. And paid them $1,500 a night. They threw the end of tour party.
Right.
Right. Yes, they should.
And they sent me a 5 million record for teaching them how to tour.
That's cool.
Because they
That's
got
awesome.
out there and they're like, what's a production manager do? Well, he advances the show. How much labor do we need? Who's eating? How much food do we need? Dressing rooms, where do those go?
Right.
What do we get for PA? What do we get for lights? They're in charge of that. And one day I'm like, well, excuse me, I got to get ready for settlement. And their tour manager's like, settlement? You just don't get a check? I said, no. Sit down. All right, you see this? This is all the expenses that are budgeted. All right, so I put that in my spreadsheet, and then they tell me what the real costs are, and then I figure out, because all this is we get a slice of that pie at the end.
Right.
Well, led him to realize, I better hire a tour account. And then they hired a production manager and everything else. So they gave me the $5 million record.
Well,
It's cool.
It's funny, Quake. Our whole premise of this show is kind of opening eyes to people that there's so much more than the 5 or 4 or the 6 guys up on stage. It takes a village.
It does.
And when someone like you comes on board with the experience behind you that can help direct these guys in the right, you deserve to get that.
Yeah.
To get that record hanging on your wall. You deserve to get the accolades.
And now you were saying, though, about somebody that kind of took my breath away.
Yeah.
A quick story here. So my dad was a music teacher in Elba. If you live in Syracuse, you've had Elba Onions.
Yeah.
His combined 4th grade through 12th grade band when he started there, because the central school was 6 kids. Within 5 years, he couldn't put a band on the field at halftime during the football game because half the football team was in the band. He made it the thing to do. But he talked about, when I was a young man, he was taking me to see my first opera. And he said the most powerful tool in music, and I'll equate this to sound as well, is the word silence.
Mm-hmm.
You've all heard that one classical piece where it swells and then just stops and leaves you hanging and takes your breath away.
Yeah.
Says it's one thing to leave a crowd cheering and screaming. It's another one to leave them slack-jawed and silent.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got a call to do Tracy Chapman. Derek Featherstone, who owns Ultrasound, it was his account. He was very good friends with her. And he was doing Primus, and he goes, I can't do it. Can you do this tour? I'm like, sure. And I wasn't the person who she wanted. I was the person who she wanted said could do the tour. So we had a little rough patch in the beginning, but got better. She had a song off her first album called Behind the Wall.
Mm-hmm.
And now this is the tour for her album New Beginnings with the song Give Me One Reason. Give Me One Reason was actually written before Fast Cars and was written just after she wrote Behind the Wall. and she would sing it a cappella. She only played it 4 times when I was with her, but she would hand her guitar to her tech, and she'd step into a single light, and she'd sing it a cappella. And it was, last night I heard the screaming from behind the wall. She went to school in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I forget the name of the school, but she's actually a licensed veterinarian. And she got signed by playing out in Harvard Square. And a guy from Warner Brothers throwing his card in her case saying,
wow.
give me a call, I'll make you famous. Well, she wanted to finish college first. But it talks about the police were called. We can't do anything. We're here to keep the peace. Last night I heard the screaming from behind the wall, and then it stopped. The police were called. There's nothing we can do. The coroner's been called. She'd step back, the lights would go off, and then you'd hear dun 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 dun. Crowd is, I've got hairs are standing up.
Mine did too.
Yeah.
I just had my
That's
Marco
crazy.
Mendoza moment in my look
Yeah.
at that. Look at
Why Fast Car was written. Let's get out of here. And give me one reason that I should stay here.
right.
Yeah.
That going on next to me. Powerful. That was the moment when I realized the sheer power of music.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, let's face it, we all know a lot of talented people that never make it.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that do, there's a reason, you know? And
Yeah.
in this case, I mean, it was wonderful to see her win another Grammy last year.
Yeah.
For a song she'd already won a Grammy for, but still.
Right.
That's awesome.
But yeah, she was one of the most talented people I'd ever dealt with. But when you talk about, you know, more people behind the scenes and stuff like that, 2020, I got recruited by a group of lighting guys mostly to do a thing called the Red Alert campaign.
In Buffalo.
I was the regional director for basically New York State. And there was a young lady from Albany by the name of Nikki Polachek who was supposed to be my and she's like, I'm your assistant. I'll book everything for it. I did podcasts. I did everything else. We pulled it all together in 10 days. We lit up 2,500 buildings, monuments, and venues.
All in red.
All in red.
I'm happy to say, thanks to the Rochester Music Hall of Fame,
Mhm.
I got Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
To light Niagara Falls up for
Yeah.
4 hours. The entire city of Rochester has neon. They did red. Downtown Buffalo, thanks to Artie Quitchoff from the town ballroom, did the same thing. Your IATSE did some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was and it was all to raise the awareness of the event industry, not just roadies, although the roadies were a big part of it, and the fact that, you know, we wear black and don't want to be recognized. But
Right.
During that period of time, we needed help too. But the event industry as a whole, and I'm talking about the guy that parks your car,
Yeah.
the restaurant up the street,
Mm-hmm.
the person that's taking your ticket,
Mhm.
you know, everybody got hurt during that period of time. Fortunately they did pass the extension of the extended unemployment, which helped, but
Right.
they were giving it out $800 a week.
Right.
And a guy like me, that's a day's pay,
Right.
and which, everybody goes, well, it seems like you sit at home a lot. Yeah, because I make so much, I could do that. I can actually have a home.
Right. Right.
I like to see my email address or signature, and it says home 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Now, when I was working for Tow the Wet Sprocket, my wife and I were living in California. My daughter had been born, and we'd get up in the morning, feed the kid. She'd go off to work, take the kid to daycare. I'd kiss the kid, kiss the wife. Into the office I'd go. They'd come home, I'd come out, kiss the wife, pat the kid on the head. Into the office I'd go. I'd eat dinner. Into the office I'd go. Oh, read to the kid. I'd read to the kid, kiss the kid goodnight, kiss my wife goodnight, back into the office.
Right.
One Friday night, my wife comes to me and goes, turn the computer off. I got a bottle of wine open. Let's sit down and let's talk. Okay. And she's like, I have to discuss something with you that's very uncomfortable. I'm like, what's that? She goes, you're losing. I'm like, what? Now, I'm a sober drug addict. I didn't realize I had cross-addicted. I became a workaholic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You're losing yourself to your business, and you're losing us. Where's she at? You've got to become a part of our lives. okay, So I was up at ultrasound about a week later, prepping for a tour, and I tell this to Dr. Don Pearson. He goes, I'd listen to her. She sounds like a smart lady. We go out on the road. This is be 30 years ago this past November. Mm-hmm. We go out on the road, and we've got 2 shows before our break at Thanksgiving, and I hadn't slept in a couple of days. And we're in Ottawa, Ontario, playing a place called the Penguin, and the place was so small that my gamble, which you saw in that picture before I came on, and the monitor console, which was another gamble, had to sit next to each other in front of the house. I didn't set it up or anything, but during sound check, I'm like, I don't feel so hot. Guys, I'm going to go lay down. I don't really need a sound check. I'll be fine. And I got into the bus and came to on the floor right as you enter. What the hell? Everybody had had the flu. I hadn't had it yet. I said, I need a B12 shot to make it through these last couple of shows. So I go in, give me a runner. I need to go to a clinic, get a B12 shot. Okay. Guy makes a call, sends me to the clinic. Clinic goes, I want to send you to a hospital to get a blood test. What? He goes, yeah, just humor me. I think something happened to your heart. I'm like, I'm 33 years old. What are you talking about? So I go in back to the venue, tell everybody I got to go get this blood drawn. Let me take one of the guys from the crew with me, go to the hospital. And I wind up not being able to leave for a while. Told the monitor guy, just have at it. Turns out I had this enzyme in my bloodstream that you get if you lift something too heavy. You've had a stroke. They're like, you're very conscious. You didn't have a stroke. Or you've had a heart issue. And it's called a CPK. And they said, you seem fine. We're going to let you self-sign yourself out of here. But as soon as you get to the U.S., you should go right in. That was my first cardiac arrest and didn't realize it. Well, go back and we make the trip back into the U.S. and given all the passports to the driver. And we had a bus mom, Norma. And about every hour or so, my curtain would open up and a mirror would come in. I'm like, Norma, I'm fine. Norma, I'm not dead. We're about an hour out of Providence, Rhode Island, and I feel this happening again. And I get into the front lounge. I'm grabbing my chest. I open the door, and Norma looks at me and she yells, Bill, get this thing. And I come to on the couch about an hour later. And all the crew is standing around me. Everybody in the band, they're all freaking out. I'm like, let's get to the venue. They went in. My truck driver, thank God, had unloaded the truck. They grabbed a road case, put me on it, because at this point I'm paralyzed from the waist down. They wheel me in, move the barricade, do this. I need an ambulance. I got it. And they're like, no, the hospital's right there. You're at Brown University. It's across the street. I go across the street, and they're like, oh, well, yeah, they drew blood, and they said, yeah, you've got this enzyme. It was 750 in Canada. It's over 3,000. You've had a cardiac incident.
Jeez.
You're in luck. We got a really good doctor here with us. He just got back from his main client out in California. So I meet this guy, and he's got to go 350 pounds if he's anything. And he's got 2 Cuban cohibas sticking out. Like, okay, so you're the hotshot cardiologist. And you're like, yeah. And he goes, I just got back from my main client. Who's your main client? He goes, this guy named Ron Reagan. You're President Reagan's cardiologist? And he's like, yeah. I said, okay, I'm in good hands.
Yeah, you can work on me.
Yep, we're good.
Yeah.
It's the first patient to arrive by road case.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, they did an angiogram, said, yeah, you've had this incident happen. You do have a dead spot from when you OD'd on your heart, but you're fine. But, what had happened was I had the flu, but instead of having a normal thing, the pericardium, the lining of my heart, had gotten sick, and my heart had gotten sick. So it's pericarditis and myocarditis.
Yeah.
Now, when your heart gets sick, it spits this enzyme out, but the pericardium, because it's sick, wasn't letting it out. So as the doctor explained to me, it was like squeezing a sponge inside of a plastic bag. That fluid had nowhere to go but back into your heart,
right,
which caused it to stop. You haven't had a heart attack, your heart stopped twice. Okay. He goes, so, lay off the cigarettes and you need to lose some weight and stuff. I said, yeah, what do you go, about 350, Doc? Yeah. Nice cohibas, by the way.
Yeah. What did you do for yours?
Exactly.
Take your own advice, Dick.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Dude.
But yeah, interesting time. So
you have definitely had a whirlwind of stuff, and
live the life of 10 men.
I think we are just scratching the surface.
Oh God, yeah.
For this gentleman here.
For sure.
We definitely want to finish. We want more of this.
Okay.
because I'm looking. I'm like, okay, we're at over an hour now, and we're not even close to getting the questions that we want to
Not even
ask this
close.
guy. And it's funny because we have guests on from time to time like yourself that I think this is the quietest he and I have ever been on a podcast. So people that are watching this are like, finally they
two
shut up, fucking idiots, shut up for it. Now let us listen to some great stories.
Well, I'm shocked that my two friends that Pete Merluzzi and Mary Jo Spillane, didn't warn you that I'll suck the air out of any room.
You know what?
They didn't.
It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
Because if somebody's talking too much, they're filling the room up with enough carbon dioxide.
Yeah, there you go.
But this wasn't. This was a breath of fresh air for an hour, and I want to thank you. We definitely want to have you back to finish this. Before the next thing
you're gone on
you're
tour
gone
somewhere.
with Slash or something again because he's got to be getting ready.
I got at least a year for that, although he keeps threatening to take his blues band over to Europe.
That's what Peter was telling us. So, I got to tell you, I love it.
It's good.
I love
it's good.
That everything to do with that.
Yes.
Blues record?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was and the band he's got is fantastic.
Yes.
Bass player was his bass player from Snake Pit. And I'll share this with you. When he was in Snake Pit, his nickname was Blackout for a reason. And he's 100% sober and a vegan now, and just plays it. He's played with all sorts of blues people. The keyboard player Teddy Andriatis played in Guns briefly, and he met both of them. They were playing at the Baked Potato doing a blues thing, and hey, can I sit in? And Tosh Neal, the one singer, was an opening act for us a few years ago. And they started looking for drummers, and they came up with Michael Jerome Moore. And the first time they saw him play, his Slash's guitar tech, like, play that song again. And he's like, dude, that's the guy. He's nuts. And if you go on YouTube, you can pick up different stuff. Storm Monday from Art Park is a great one.
Yeah.
Just you watch that guy, and you're like, oh my God. His hands are going everywhere, and he's not missing me.
I'll tell you, I've been a fan. I've always been a fan of some real classic blues, and then started listening to more and more as we've had more and more guests on. And then we meet Taj. Yeah. We meet Taj Front, that young 15-year-old kid that's just
oh my God. Burn your guitars, kids.
That kid is just
man.
And he was just on the show, and when you're talking about how you've helped people go from clubs to arenas, I'm immediately thinking, his mom and dad are doing everything and doing very well at it.
Yeah.
But boy, there's a brain to pick. It would be yours. Now he's going to be in Niagara Falls July 9th. Just to let you know. So,
cool. Well, I'll share this one last little story for you. I think I told you guys last year I was diagnosed with a severe kidney issue. Mm-hmm. What I have is somewhat rare. It's called nephrotic syndrome for people are my age. And it's caused by a thing called FSGS. I'll let you look that one up, which is rare for someone my age to have that. FSGS, the part of my kidney that deals with protein, has died. And there's no cure. I won't recover from this. I've lost 80 pounds since last May. And I was hospitalized in September. I went in on a Wednesday before my anniversary. And on my anniversary, I'm getting they're messing with all my medications. I'm getting these different infusions. They're trying to keep me off of dialysis because the other part of my kidneys up until been working fine, but all of a sudden it went south. Well, I get a text from a young lady that I toured with over in Europe earlier that year. And she says, hey, happy anniversary and get ready. I wrote back, question mark, what are you talking about? It's on WhatsApp. And starting about an hour later, for 2 hours straight, I got texts, emails, WhatsApp messages from over 100 people around the world, all telling me how important I had been to their careers, how much they had learned from me, how much they cherished my relationship with them, and to stay strong. Now, you want to talk about a humbling experience. Yeah. And I'm talking truck drivers, bus drivers, opening acts, stagehands, sound and lighting companies,
Right.
promoter reps telling me this.
Wow.
It culminated with a 2-hour phone call with Slash, which I'm proud to say I made a black man cry. So, what the heck? But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
And I had a discussion a few years back with some good friends of mine, Toby Francis and Pooch, Kevin Van Druten. It was right after this guy ML Procise had died, and Toby had gone on and talked about his relationship with ML and how ML had always told him, I'm imparting this wisdom to you, and you need to impart it to everybody else. And I've always had that philosophy. I had great people that taught me when I was a kid, and it's only fair to share that and pay it forward. I also point out the fact that I used to rig, and there was no harnesses. You climbed hand to hand on a beam 80 feet in the air, and then throw a rope over and made a little basket for yourself and hung yourself. But you're hand to hand. There's no safeties,
Right.
and you're welcome. Because we went through that, you don't have to.
Yeah.
And they used to work all day, and through chemical enhancements, drove the truck all night and then worked all day again, and you're welcome because you don't have to go through that. And all these kids are like, holy crap. I did a band called Jack's Mannequin for a while, and they were like, oh, these stories can't all be true. And then they met a friend of mine who worked with me with Talus, and he goes, oh, no, they're all true. He's not, why would he lie?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So we're going to ask you this question, but it is not the end of our conversations because we definitely are going to have you back. But go ahead, Jeff. This
You
is
want me to
your
do this one?
famous
All right.
question. Yes. And you already know we're going to ask you this.
I know. So when it's finally, all over, what do you want your legacy to be?
I hate the way you put that.
I know. I don't care.
you're talking about my legacy.
Yeah.
Hmm?
And it's funny you said that because through this little incident with my kidneys and stuff, I've done a lot of reflection. I've had to tell this to several of my artists. When that day comes, I want them to just remember me with a smile and realize that I did everything I could to the best of my abilities to help them out. Total Wet Sprocket, Dangerous Toy,
Yeah.
Goo Goo Dolls,
Yeah.
Slash in particular. I actually asked Slash recently that when that day comes, if he'll honor me to show up at my wedding or my funeral wedding.
Same
they're
thing.
pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, same thing.
He showed up at my funeral. First off, I've told my daughter, I said, roadies show up. They all, nope, don't let the roadies go in and sit down. Don't let the artists that I've worked with go and sit down. I said, you're to give all the roadies one of my bandanas. By the way, I've got about 70 of them. So
we expect one sent to us, and we'll hang it back
Put it
here.
right over here.
All right. I could show you pictures. Primus did a Quake Appreciation Day. Now everybody on both bands and crews wore bandanas. And a few years ago at Jazz Fest, they had Jeff Goldblum, and Jeff Goldblum and the two audio guys at the Eastman had bandanas on for Quake Appreciation Day. But I told Slash, and I've told this to other artists, that if he doesn't show up, then you're next in line and stuff. But I'm going to be want road crew to come in first, followed by the musicians, followed by my family with Slash and his girlfriend. And I want him to carry me in and out of the hospital or out of the church. And I made a black man cry for a second time. Just I tell folks this all the time. I'm an honest man. That's gotten me in a lot of trouble with a lot of the managers because I'll walk in and go, wow, that really sucked when it did. But the artists and the people that are around me deserve that honesty from me. And I'm also the guy that, I've had some artists and some stuff that was very difficult to deal with. Jane's Addiction, Paul Westerberg, Tracy. I did Courtney Love for a while.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Poor man.
So I also got known as the person that would go in and clean up a mess.
Yeah.
Just realize that I always tried and I was always straight with you. I never sugarcoated it and I never lied to you.
Right.
Awesome.
Well, I'll tell you what. You've made our lives a little better today, getting to hear these stories. I know now why Peter just was pressing. He said, "You've got to have him on your show." I know now why you're friends with guys like Bob, Night Bob.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of people say they know where the bodies are buried.
Yeah, exactly.
These guys were help dig the holes.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So we can't thank you enough for being on the show, and just don't go anywhere because I want to wrap this between the three of us. But I don't know what even else. It's very. It's not often that I'm speechless, but this is we really appreciated you doing this for us. Really did, and lovingly that you are so close to us.
I know.
I'm in Rochester and Buffalo all the time for the day gig. So, love to sit down and break some bread with you.
Okay.
So stick around.
Stick around for a minute.
We're gonna roll the music and we're gonna wrap this up, and then we'll be right back. I don't even want to do the traditional outro. It's such a good interview. Part 1 done. Part 2 to come. You've been listening to The Good,
The Band,
The Ugly. I'm Big Papa.
And I'm Jeff.
And that's Quake. We want to thank our sponsors. Oh, I don't know. Uncle Jimmy's Local Live Music.
The Print Shop Underground.
You got to get that one.
Because you're going to get that one.
Blackheart Tattoo. If you want a tattoo, mention my name so I can get a free one.
And spring is around the corner, man.
Hogwash. We got to get your bikes
time.
cleaned. Mention that so he can come out and wash mine again.
Yep. Snarky Productions.
Toffee Break Toffee. We want to mention. We haven't mentioned that in a while. And it's definitely time to mention
it. Almost feels good to say that.
And don't forget, Ultimate Ears, folks.
Oh, man.
You're
hear your own
to
tears.
Us with Ultimate Ears in the Ultimate Ears studio. We want to thank our biggest sponsor. And if you need Ultimate Ears, make sure to get a hold of me because it looks like the paperwork's going through and I will be an official Ultimate Ears dealer. So, thank you so much, everybody. Remember what we always say.
Be kind to each other.
Don't be a dick. Peace out. Don't do it.